Thank you and welcome everyone. Happy New Year. This is the first meeting of the APC, Advisory Planning Commission for 2025. My name is Steve Duck and I'm your council liaison and chair until we'll go through the process of looking at chair from the board later in this meeting. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting. This meeting is held on the traditional territories of the Samic peoples who have held this territory in perpetuity for many generations. I kind of find it interesting that we're the Advisory Planning Commission looking at land management and land care, and we're acknowledging people who have done it for immemorial up to now. So it's kind of an important relationship that you bring to the town of Sydney in respect to what you do with the APC. So yes, we will always be holding our meetings on the traditional lands of the Samic peoples and looking after the lands as we move forward. We thank them for their service and continuing that service in the future. I'd like to first go around the room and get everybody have a chance to introduce themselves and just sort of give an indication of what your background is and your interest in being on the Advisory Planning Commission. And I'll start with myself. I am only sitting in this chair position for today, and one of you will take over that role moving forward. I'm a councillor in my second year, first term with the town of Sydney, and the liaison. I'm your voice to the council and take forward your decisions and your thoughts and your ideas to reflect that to council and forward those ideas. We have staff members who will introduce themselves, and they essentially present the information as it gets received by the town and give you sort of the context of that information. And the other folks that we'll have in these meetings will be developers and builders and homeowners that wish to come in and make a presentation to APC looking for a certain direction from them. So who'd like to go next?
My name is Eric Diller, and this is my second term on APC. And I'm a small business owner here in Sydney. I have an electrical contracting firm, and I just have an interest in development. I'd like to see good development come to our town, and that's me.
We don't have to go around the table.
But we will.
We keep track that way.
Yeah. My name is Dennis Carlson. I'm a new APC member. I'm a retired city planner and was also formerly on the board of the Sydney Community Association. So I know these folks well. And I think my interest with this commission is how developments fit within the context of the location they're in terms, especially when there's variances involved, and what fit or lack of fit there might be with adjacent properties.
My name is Todd Rayner, and I own Fox Motor Rent, the motorcycle rental company in Sydney, and the sandblasting company that caters to all the manufacturers in the town, everybody. And I also run most of the Sydney Facebook groups, like This is Sydney and the Rant and Wine group and whatnot. So I have a pretty good idea of what people are wanting and that type of thing. And I've flipped several houses in Sydney, so I've dealt with all the development process and whatnot over the years. And I'm smart, so I have good ideas. And yeah, that's about it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Selena Fletcher. I'm the municipal planner at the town of Sydney.
I'm Alison Verhagen. I'm the Director of Development Services here for Sydney. I've been here for quite a while, since 2006. I've seen lots of development happening, and I enjoy being a part of this committee because being the staff liaison along with Selena to the committee, because it's interesting to see what people bring to us in terms of new development ideas and how people are responding to the policy direction and the official community plan and the design guidelines that are out there, and what that translates to in terms of new buildings and development. So it's always interesting seeing how things go at APC.
I'm Heather. I'm substituting in for Ruth, who is normally here, and Ruth will be your contact person and take minutes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Dawson. I'm new to the community. This is my first meeting, so it's nice to meet you all. 25 years on the island, but just recently moved to Sydney. I'm close to retirement. I'm currently the National Director for Pfizer Canada, so my contribution here is really I want to give back to the community. I have really no vested interests in terms of business development or anything like that, but I really want to offer my services around strategic planning, budget management, and I'm really committed to living and growing our family here to the end. We can be here for as long as we can. So I want to do what I can to help the community. It's nice to meet you all.
My name is Alex Gorlick. I'm a British Columbia land surveyor. It's my third year on a committee. I naturally have interest in anything zoning related. As a land surveyor, I deal with that on a daily basis. So for me, it's been a pleasure of being on the committee and very interesting to see what's going on in Sydney. We've been in Sydney for, it's our 7th year living in Sydney. So it's also interesting to see the development going on. So I enjoy being on the committee and plan on being on the committee for next little while. If I'm allowed to, of course.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Ryder and retired architect. I was on this committee actually with Eric and Alec year before last. And the last 2 years I've been on SPAC, which is the Saanich Peninsula Advisory Committee for Accessibility. So I bring that interest as well to this group.
My name is Harold Wiesner. I'm a retired BC land surveyor and have lived here in Sydney for 3 years now. Been here on the committee for 1 year, and I've enjoyed learning more about the development that is happening here in town, and looking forward to another year.
Thanks, everyone. Again, thank you for your service to the town and city, because it's important work that we do with the Advisory Planning Commission. Certainly it helps both the council and staff move forward in putting together responses to the official community plan and the zoning bylaws and such that you'll be dealing with. At this point, I'd like to open the floor to election of the chair and vice chair. So anybody wishes to either self-nominate or nominate someone. Don't be bashful.
I'll nominate Eric, as he used to be vice chair. So I think that would be logical for him to step into chair position.
Eric, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Okay. Other nominees?
Sorry, Eric.
Seeing none, is there asking again for a second time?
I'll actually nominate David Ryder as chair.
David, would you accept that nomination?
I appreciate the nomination, but I defer to someone that's more experienced in the lead position.
Okay. For a third time and last, any other nominations for chair? Nominations closed, and by acclamation, Eric, the new chair of the APC.
Congratulations.
We'll move to the vice chair. Nominations for vice chair.
I can nominate myself.
Okay.
And I accept the nomination.
Thanks, Alex. That's really kind of you.
That was quick.
I figured.
You just wanted to- yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Any other
Figured somebody
nominations?
will say that.
Second time, any other nominations? See none. Third? See none. By acclamation, Alex, you are the vice chair of the Advisory Planning Commission. At this point, I will turn the meeting over to Eric to chair.
Thank you.
You kind of did there. I can get out of the way.
I kind of envisioned it that way, to be honest.
So thank you for for making me chair. I will do my best to lead this committee in a, or chair the committee in a fair and effective manner. And we obviously have quorum, and so so I'd like to call this first meeting of the APC to order at 2:14, and our agenda. And so can I have a mover for the adoption of the remainder of the agenda? Harold? Yeah, go for it. And can I have a seconder? Is there any discussion on it? The adoption of the remainder of the agenda? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. And now we move to the adoption of the minutes from November 5th, 2024. Can I have a mover for the adoption of the minutes, Alex? And is there a seconder? And is there any discussion on the minutes? Did anyone find any omissions or inaccuracies with those minutes? I'll just say for the record that in my overlooking of those minutes, I thought that they were very accurate. But if anyone else has something to say.
No, we're good.
No. Okay. Can we adopt the minutes from November 5th? Call a question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Unanimous. And now, so as far as we're just going to move on to item 6, which is a review of the APC mandate.
Do you have it on you?
Staff presentation.
Do you want it?
Thank you.
I can go over this if you like.
Yeah, if Allison would like to do it, that would be preferable.
Unless you would like to.
That would be preferable, this being my first meeting.
Okay, I think, do we all have a copy of this APC mandate? In your matters? This is covered in the presentation as well, but we'll just go through the mandate just quickly. The mandate is an excerpt from the bylaw to establish an advisory planning commission, which is bylaw number 2181 for the town of Sydney. So it's to advise council on matters which have been referred to the commission by the council and report back. So it goes through there a bit more in detail. And to consider all matters respecting land use, community planning, and proposed bylaws and permits. So these are the things that we're to be looking at, looking at professional critique on the overall design, character of the proposed development in relation to its surroundings, the development including landscaping and preservation of natural amenities, building design with reference to human needs, including size of entrances and location of the same, view, privacy and noise, outdoor lighting and signs, and other concerns which may relate to matters of health, safety, security, and amenities. APC is also responsible for environmental matters referred to it by council, and also to consider all matters with regards to transportation, townscape, and long-range planning that are referred to APC by council, and heritage as well. So it's quite a broad scope of things that could come to APC. The bottom part of the page just gets into correspondence or communication from the public. I'm sure you've all seen in the news over the years that some development applications are a bit more controversial than others. Some people may see your name as a committee member and try to contact you to talk about it. The town requests that members do not engage, but just refer them to the Development Services Department at the town hall. You can talk to Selena or I, or one of our other planners. We've got Corey Newcomb, who's our Director of Community Planning, and Caitlin Young as well, who's one of our planners. So people are requested to come in and talk to staff if they have concerns or questions about a development. As APC members, you're volunteers, you're not expected to speak on behalf of the town. And it's not your role to be lobbied or influenced by citizens that have strong opinions one way or the other. So that's what's in the mandate there. So I'll get into the presentation if that's all right, Eric. Okay, so welcome from your Development Services Department. Just to give you an idea of what we do here in the Development Services Department at the Town Hall. We provide a support role to APC. We review development applications, subdivisions. We do long-range planning for the community, looking at the CRD's regional growth strategy. That's what RGS is there. We review maintain the town's official community plan, we look at local area plans, develop those. We also do building inspections. We have 2 building inspectors for Sydney that look for building code compliance on new development. We coordinate climate action efforts for the town. We liaise with bylaw enforcement, which falls under the engineering department, but a lot of it has to do with bylaws related to development services, like the zoning bylaw or the business license bylaw or the building bylaw. We also do business licensing, which includes liquor and cannabis licensing applications. So we process those applications and do the inspections and work with the fire department on coordinating those business inspections. And we also do property addressing, general inquiries, business signage, all kinds of things that don't really fall under the other departments of the town, like engineering, finance, administration, public works, and parks. So the Advisory Planning Commission, the reason we have this is because of the legislation for BC in the Local Government Act, which has this section 461, which says a council may by bylaw establish an APC to advise council on these things about community planning and propose bylaws and permits under certain divisions in the Local Government Act, which are to do with community planning. So the bylaw specifies 2/3 of the members must be residents of Sydney, which we have. And it says who is and is not eligible to be on APC. So council reviews this when they're reviewing who to appoint to APC. Because it says it's an unpaid position, it's volunteer. Minutes are part of the public record. Applicants attend meetings and are heard. The meeting is open to the public, but the public cannot speak in the meeting. So we may have meetings where members of the public who are interested attend. They would typically sit behind the commission in the table behind or just against the wall, and they're welcome to be here for the whole meeting, but they can't speak or participate. The bylaw, the APC bylaw that I mentioned before, it does set out the process for the APC, how long the terms are. Robert's Rules of Order apply in terms of voting and seconding and making motion, typical things from a meeting. If you don't vote, it's deemed that you're voting in the affirmative. So if you're agreeing with what's happening, you don't necessarily have to put up your hand to vote. But if you don't, then we're assuming that you were on the yes side there. Meetings are the first and third Tuesdays of the month at 2 p.m. If you think you have a conflict of interest, you are required to recuse yourself or excuse yourself. So on this, one of the forms in your binder, there is some information about that conflict of interest. So if you feel that you have a conflict, please, you do need to say so. and give a short reason for it. Could be whether it's a pecuniary interest or a family interest, or it's your next door neighbor and you feel that you just have a too close for comfort on this one. Then you do need to excuse yourself, and in that case you would say so before, like when the item comes up on the agenda, and excuse, and we would record it in the minutes the time that you left the meeting, and you'd step out to the hallway, go walk around, and then if there's more items on the agenda, we call you back when that one comes. Sometimes there's only one item on the agenda, and in that case you would leave the meeting at that point, unless you wanted to stay and wait to see what else was happening at the end, like the items dispositioned by council, where Councillor Duck, as our liaison, gives an update on items that have gone through APC and what council did with them when they came back to APC. So if you have any questions about conflict of interest, just contact Ruth or me and we can guide you through it. If you're absent from 4 consecutive meetings, except due to illness or with leave from council, your appointment could be reconsidered by council. We've never had this happen before. If something comes up, just let us know if you won't be able to attend, and we'll talk to administration and see what we can do. And again, the terms of reference, we briefly went over this before. What APC is looking at when you're looking at development applications, it's a good idea to go back and look at this throughout the year, just to remind yourself of what we're looking at. The staff reports that we prepare for APC are quite detailed, and they give a review of the development applications in context with the design guidelines from the OCP that apply to say, here's the town's set of guidance, here's what they're proposing, and here's what matches and here's what doesn't match. So yeah, planning, environmental, also heritage. So environment and heritage issues don't typically come to APC, but they can. So we'll see what happens this year. And just a couple comments on the development review process. There's lots of different types of applications. Development permits with major and minor variances, zoning bylaw amendments, official community plan bylaw amendments, temporary use permits, both commercial and industrial. They aren't so common in Sydney, but they can happen. Also border variance applications. So this gives a short summary of the development review process. It's set out by the Land Use Procedures bylaw for Sydney. Every municipality has their own bylaw for what is the process, but in what directs that is legislation from the province and the Local Government Act. As staff, we typically meet with applicants beforehand, and as they're coming up with their concept, and we meet with them to talk about what the bylaws and policies are around what they'd like to do and give them some guidance. We try to be clear with people at the beginning whether it's something that we could support or not, just so that they know. Property owner has the right to submit an application for whatever they like, but we do try to be clear on whether it's something staff can support or not. But as it says, recommendations to deny an application are rare, more likely to redesign to bring some things into compliance or to better address design guidelines. But some things, yeah, if we're just not coming eye to eye with an applicant, sometimes we do recommend denial. Sometimes we can recommend design changes. Also, APC can recommend design changes for council. So APC's spot in the process is where the red arrow is there. You can see the red ovals around those 2 points there. So that's where the applicant has to make a presentation to committee of the whole, which is our mayor and the 6 councillors in a different setting than a council meeting. The applicant has to present their project, answer questions. The public can ask questions then too. And they'll also have to present it to APC. So as the members that are returning, the applicant typically present either through Zoom, remotely, or in person and answer questions of the committee at that point. And the APC will make a recommendation, which is forwarded back to council, and they'll make the ultimate decision about the application. So development permits, those are requirement based on the development permit areas and the official community plan. So certain parts of Sydney and certain types of development are designated as development permit areas. It's all set by the Local Government Act about what can and can't be a development permit area. Some of them are for the form and character of development, like the look of the building, how it fits into the neighborhood. So we have form and character development permit areas for commercial, industrial, multi-family or multi-unit residential, and intensive residential, which is the small lot, single family. We also have environmentally sensitive DP areas, which are primarily to do with siting, permeability on the site, like how much of it is hard surfaced, landscape choices, environmental factors like that. There's no legislated public notification for a development permit, but in Sydney, our bylaw does say that for a new development permit major in the downtown core, we do send a notice out at the beginning of the process to let people know that this application is coming. Variance permits, those are enabled again by provincial legislation and the Local Government Act. And bylaws are by nature one size fits all. So many properties have different dimensions and topography and size and shape. And zoning bylaws are prescriptive. There's a minimum front setback, and that's it. Like, there's set regulations and set numbers, and those aren't necessarily going to fit every property in every situation. That's why the province allows variances to bylaws. Variances may be part of development applications that come to APC. Not every variance application comes to APC. Usually the only ones that come are the ones that are part of a bigger development application process. There is public notification for these. We send a notice out to a radius of usually 75 meters or 250, 246 feet around the property so that people that live nearby get an idea of what's proposed. Zoning bylaw amendments are necessary only when an application is wanting to change the use or density on a property. So most development in Sydney, most properties are already zoned for what the official community plan is saying the use of that property should be. So we don't see so many zoning applications now as we used to maybe 5-10 years ago. The rules around public hearings for zoning amendments changed last year. So we don't require a public hearing for every rezoning anymore. We don't need them if it's for a residential development that's in line with the OCP and where at least 50% of the building is residential. OCP amendments, again, we don't see many of these in Sydney, but they're generally proposed when what the applicant wants to do when the property isn't in line with what the current OCP designation is. So they're proposing to change it. Those do involve a few more consultation steps at the beginning and during the process. Council needs to decide early in an OCP amendment who they're going to consult with and when on that. And we definitely do mail out and newspaper notifications, sign on the property, and a public hearing for an OCP amendment. Temporary use permits also are part of the legislation in the Local Government Act. It's like a zoning amendment, but it's time limited. So maximum time of 3 years. Sometimes municipalities use them to try a new use in a place or to allow something the applicant really only wants for a couple of years, but not permanently. So they are time limited and they can be renewed once. In Sydney, we can allow a temporary use permit in both the industrial area and the commercial area. So again, we haven't seen these often in Sydney, but you never know what somebody might propose in the future. This gives you an idea of development in Sydney. It really fluctuates over time. And you've probably seen, if you've been here for a while or if you're new to the community, every community goes through waves and cycles in development and growth. We had a big wave between 2018 and 2021. You can see that peak here. Now this shows units approved by occupancy permit. So the big peak through APC and through council for that development permit approval was 2018, 2019. There was a lot of developments. Really 2017 too, it was picking up in terms of the development approval, and then the construction picks up, and then the market is saturated and it drops back down. So you can kind of see this shows 10 years, 2014 to 2024. The new units approved by council in 2024 was much larger, close to 300 or so. But building permits approved, building permits was quite low because we had a lot under construction and we had a lot of, again, this shows net new units, right, Heather? I think it's net new units, which is why it was about 10, which seems very, very low when you think of how much construction everybody saw in Sydney. But think of all like a single family house taken down and a duplex built, that's a net gain of 1 unit because you lost one and you're adding 2. And the value of the permits too, like this shows a good cycle that it goes up and down. So last year, council approved several big developments, which are now in the process of applying for building permits. So I think we're going to see another peak back up here. So it all goes in cycles. Also, APC plays a role in long-term planning. So as we said, APC's role is to advise council on any matter that is referred to APC. So whether that's a development application or an OCP review, like whether we're starting to review our official community plan and council wants to get APC's input on part of that. That can be part of what APC does as well. I'm just touching on some of the major bylaws that we talk about in the staff reports that come to APC and that kind of set the context for planning and development in Sydney. There's the OCP, which includes the West Side Local Area Plan as a schedule, the zoning bylaw, the off-street parking and loading bylaw. That's for parking on private properties, not for parking on the street. We also talk about the subdivision and development bylaw, land use procedures bylaw that sets out how we deal with development applications. Tree preservation is a hot issue in Sydney, most places in BC. That's a big thing right now, is tree preservation and planting new trees. So a tree preservation bylaw is a good one to know. And then our sign bylaw as well. With the OCP, it sets the long-term vision and kind of the big picture goal for development in Sydney, what types of uses we want to see, where main purpose is good growth management. And we do need to respond to where Sydney fits in the capital regional district's goals for our region as a whole. It identifies Sydney as a growth area, as a sub-regional node. Can't remember the exact term, but we are an area that's identified as kind of a little economic hub for the peninsula. So the OCP sets the vision and goals for Sydney. We went through a big OCP review from 2019 to 2022. We just completed it. It feels like we just did it, but we do have to review it again this year because of new provincial housing legislation to make sure that it contains enough growth opportunity for our housing needs assessment numbers that we just got finished last fall, December. The OCP is also important for setting the scene for all the town's other bylaws and policies. It's kind of the overarching framework for everything we do, whether it's on public land or private land. It informs strategic planning council, and it also informs the budget process that council goes through every year. Just touching quickly on the West Side Local Area Plan. So this is a schedule to the OCP. It was adopted in 2018. It changes the land use for this residential area down here, kind of west of the highway, west of Highway 17, north of Beacon Avenue West, just east of Gallerance, little triangle of residential area there. Changing the land use there from the single and two family homes that are there now to more of higher density residential and a mixed use village with some light industrial and commercial in the middle. So that the zoning amendments were completed for that last year in 2024. There's been 2 development applications so far. One was approved at the corner of Beacon and the highway, a big patch of vacant land there. And another one is still under review at 2114 Beacon. It's a large lot with 1 house on it, about halfway from the highway to Gallerance, the new roundabout. Just a development permit areas, as I mentioned, there's ones for the form and character or the look of a development, and there's development permit areas for environmental sensitivity as well. So this map shows the environmental sensitivity development permit areas. When we adopted that OCP in 2022, a few of those areas were expanded. So there's new properties in the DP areas, especially all down the east waterfront here. That was all new in that OCP. Important to note, you may have heard last year about small scale multi-unit housing, and that now most residential properties in Sydney can have up to 4 units on them. That was a big part of our zoning bylaw update that was done last year, and there was a lot of news around the province because this applies everywhere around the province now. Most small scale multi-unit housing developments in Sydney are not going to require a development permit, which means they're going to be done by staff in-house. They won't go through council unless they're looking for a variance, which means they also won't come to APC. So some will, some won't. It just depends on where in Sydney they already are. The zoning bylaw, as I mentioned, we reviewed the zoning bylaw and completed that review last year in June. It is more prescriptive than the OCP because it gives specific dimensions and numbers for height, setbacks, lot coverage, specific uses that are permitted on properties, what can and can't go where. This is the one most people are looking at if they're building smaller residential developments. They don't have to get a development permit. They need to comply with the zoning bylaw. So we use this bylaw every day in Sydney. And it's definitely talked about in the reports that come to APC. And again, we have to review it and maybe update it this year to the housing legislation to make sure that we have enough built-in housing supply in the bylaws to meet our housing needs assessment. Off-street parking and loading bylaw. Parking is a major driver, no pun intended, of urban design. When you have to fit in a certain number of parking spaces, that affects where the building can go and how big it can be, where the built form can be on the property in relation to where the parking spaces are. So it really affects design of buildings. The parking bylaw contains how big parking spaces are, drive aisles, required bike parking, all that's in the parking bylaw. So that's part of what comes to APC in these staff reports as well. And Sydney's parking bylaw does require bicycle parking, both secure indoor parking and outdoor bike racks. And it also requires EV charging. So that's something that might be talked about in those APC reports. And as I mentioned, there's some other bylaws that we'll be talking about sometimes in reports to APC, and it's good to know about that we have there. But nobody is expected to memorize the bylaws. It's just sometimes helpful to know that there are bylaws that pertain to these developments. You're always welcome to ask questions. Does anybody have any questions right now? I know that.
Chairman, through Allison. And it's apologies for rookie questions, but as the items are coming to APC have been vetted through staff and through council already, do they come with a recommendation?
They do, yeah. So staff has a recommendation on those reports. Some of it is because of the city's process for getting the applications kind of forward to the next step. Like say the application includes a variance. And if staff are supporting the variance, then the recommendation would have specific wording in it about that council proceed with the notification that people report back to council with comments. So yeah, the recommendation, the staff reports do have recommendations, which APC can adopt or can pass and support or can change.
Okay.
Yeah, the standard wording is in there for Sydney's process and just dealing with these applications.
Great, thanks.
Harold had his hand up and then. Sorry. In this case, go to Dennis and then.
I've got a couple of questions, Allison. I think you kind of touched on, but the first one was, how is it determined what items are referred to APC?
That's up to council. So
Okay.
council decides that.
So there's not criteria necessarily.
Well, at a staff level, when we're reviewing an application, if it's a major development permit, like you say it's an application for a new townhouse development, our recommendation would include referring that to APC for a more thorough review of it against the design guidelines because of that DP for the form and character of the development. Say it's a variance for someone's back sun deck on a property that's not in a development permit area. It's a single family house and they want to extend their deck by 10 feet and it needs a variance. We would not recommend referring that to APC because it's not in a development permit area for the look of the building. Say that's a new house in an environmentally sensitive area that needs a development permit for the siting of the property and a building permit. And that's done in-house by staff. We normally would not send that to council or unless we're recommending denial. The only reason we would send like a report on a development permit minor to council would be is if we're recommending denial. Then the applicant has a chance to appeal that to council. So it's up to council what to send. And it's with like bigger bylaw review projects in terms of OCP reviews or bylaw reviews, it's up to council to decide what comes to APC for their input on those processes.
And just one of the questions on it. So there's another number of policies and plans that the town has, like the urban forest strategy, the parks plan, the transportation management plan, Are those documents within the purview of APC when we're reviewing applications, or is it because when I look at the mandate, it's quite tight?
Yeah, I mean, members can make comments and suggestions or recommendations based on any of the town's adopted policies, but APC's mandate is specific. And when we're reviewing the applications, we're reviewing them against those design guidelines. If there's say there's protected trees on a property, there'll often be a section about tree preservation in the staff report saying what's proposed to be retained and removed and any comments about should the building be redesigned to protect these trees or not?
So it wouldn't be,
Yeah.
would it be, so if I said, well, I'm not sure how this application supports, for example, the urban forest strategy, just for example. So would that be an appropriate thing to comment on, or
Yeah.
leave it, have to leave it out?
Nope, you don't have to leave it out. I think if a member felt like the proposed development could be improved based on a different policy, or if you felt that you couldn't support it because it proposed removal of X number of protected trees, which was not in line with the urban forest strategy, that's a fair comment to make. And then that could be caught in the record of decision, which is something that we do at APC that's been done in previous years, where the committee discusses, asks questions of the applicant, deliberates on it, votes on the recommendation, and then we do what's called a record of decision, which is several bullet points, usually typed up by Ruth, our admin assistant, not here today, but she'd type them up, share the screen, and it's a summary of the discussion of the committee. Committee members generally were supportive of this application, saw merit in the building design. And if there's one member who has a strong opinion that isn't the same as the group, that's the place to record that too. Like, one member voted against this because they did not feel it supported the urban forest strategy. That can be captured in that record of decision. It's not verbatim minutes. It's not intended to be, but it's meant to kind of capture the essence of the discussion so that council gets a feel for what APC's discussion was.
Great, thank you.
Is a carriage house an accessory building or a dwelling?
Currently under the new zoning bylaw, it would be considered a dwelling. So
Okay.
we've removed accessory dwelling buildings from the bylaw and have incorporated those under a catch-all phrase, dwelling unit.
Okay. So they would, instead of, what is it, 1.2 meters or something for accessory building, it would be like the 4.5 meters?
Yeah,
For like rear setbacks and stuff?
it would have to meet the main zoning parameters for that zone.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Thanks.
Thank you, Allison.
I had a couple of housekeeping things relative to the meetings that, just for those new members, typically the meeting runs from 2 till 4. Just make sure you allow that accommodation of time. Because sometimes we get into lengthy discussions or presentation. The other is to let you know that every meeting is available, as you saw today, by Zoom, so that you can attend. If you happen to be ill or out of town or whatever, and still want to be part of the meeting. Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, just to add to Allison's point about the record of decision, that's an important place because as a commission, you vote on a recommendation. But if there are just things you want to, as Dennis pointed out, you want to bring to the attention of council, that's the opportunity to, as Allison mentioned, the recommendation comes and you pass it or fail it. But also, if there's any other points you want to make sure council's aware of, that's my role here, is to take those points forward.
Thank you, Steve. So if nobody has any further questions? No. All right. Moving on to item 7, items disposition by council. Steve.
I don't think there's anything currently on the docket. Is there, Allison, that needs to come on? I know there will be a meeting of this commission probably in a couple of weeks, which there will be. And Allison, do you want to give any preview of that, or is it?
Not at this point. So the agendas are published usually the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting. And if somebody's requested a hard copy package, we try to have that available on Thursday or Friday. But yeah, the agendas are put up on the website and they're publicly available.
Other than that, I don't think there's anything outstanding.
I don't have the package in front of me right now. Can you remind me what was on the minutes that are in the package that council has today? Was it the 7th Street development? Trying to think when that one went to APC.
Did go to APC.
Yeah.
Which development is it? That was
3rd Street, 9895, 9899, 7th Street.
okay. I'm not sure if we had I feel like we did have a meeting since then, but in case we didn't, I don't know if you wanted to, or I could provide the group with an update on what happened at council for the Third Street, which was a small lot development on Third. That one was approved by council. And then the development at 9895, 9899 7th.
Yeah.
So that one, I believe council denied the variance request, but did not make a decision on the development permit. So that's still open. So the applicant is redesigning. So we do expect a submission back from them.
Which one is that, across the school?
That's
Across the
right.
field?
Yeah.
That's Rest Haven one. Didn't committee decline that one? It was the two little lots. Is that the one you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to a 2-lot, small lot development on Third, just south of Orchard Avenue.
Oh, right.
I don't think committee can decline anything, though. We can recommend against, or.
Those are the two that came to APC in November, I believe.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Which brings us to item 8, which is meeting adjournment. Can I have a mover for adjournment? Todd? And seconder?
Do you need one?
No,
Yeah.
You're doing so well, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Look forward to the coming year.
Hang in on my day back, Eric.